Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kaylee Hayakawa. I use she or they pronouns, and I am the Violence Prevention Coordinator for graduate student staff and faculty at the UCI CARE office, as well as a facilitator for today's panel. If you aren't familiar, the CARE office provides support services, consultation, and outreach and educational programming to the entire UCI community relating to different forms of power-based personal violence, such as sexual assault, relationship violence, sexual harassment, and stalking. This monthly Lunch and Learn program is meant to provide a space of learning and community building for faculty and staff around the topics of violence awareness, violence prevention, and individual and community wellness. As we continue with the session, please participate in the way that feels most comfortable and safe for you. Please keep in mind that this session is being recorded, and we will do our best to keep participant videos out of the recording. That being said, if you need to communicate privately with me, please feel free to privately message me through the chat, which will not be shown in the recording. A link to the recording will be sent out to all participants once it's ready. Please also note that live captioning is on if you would like to enable it for yourself. In terms of our general structure today, our panelists will be introducing themselves and their departments. I will then ask a few general pre-prepared questions, and then we'll go ahead and open it up for Q&A with everyone. So today we have with us Senior Associate Ombudsman Jennifer Moumneh from the Office of the Ombudsman, Senior Investigator Katherine Papageorges from the Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity, and Detective Michele Painter from the UC Irvine Police Department. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to start us off by asking each of you to please introduce your role on campus and your department's involvement in reporting and resolution options for faculty and staff. So whoever would like to get us started.
I can go first. Good afternoon now, I guess, everybody. My name is Jennifer Moumneh, and I am one of the ombudsmen on campus. I've been in the office for over 15 years, and some of you may be familiar with the Office of the Ombudsman, or it may be a completely new term to you. So just to explain what we do and our role, the Office of the Ombudsman is an informal resource for anybody in the UCI community who has any type of a UCI related concern. And we can discuss options regarding any sort of question or concern that somebody has. We are not an office of notice, so we don't formally report anything that comes to our office. I'll go into this more fully later. We are confidential, with the exception of somebody disclosing an imminent risk of serious harm to self or others. And we also are available to informally mediate a conversation or a situation if that's something that somebody would like us to get involved with.
Go next. My name is Katherine Papageorges. I'm a senior investigator at the Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity at UCI. The acronym is OEOD, and we are the administrative neutral office on campus that has jurisdiction over faculty, staff, and students, anybody that does business with the university, or anybody at our medical center or ambulatory clinics regarding allegations, questions, or concerns for sexual harassment, discrimination based on protected categories under California law and federal law, so things like race, gender, sexual orientation, a number of other categories. And then we also cover sexual violence, and so that's dating violence, domestic violence, stalking, and sexual assault. And then we have a retaliation policy, which is just a fancy way of saying that anybody should feel free to come, speak to us, share their concerns or questions without fear of some sort of adverse action because of that. So that's who we have jurisdiction over and what we have jurisdiction over. Our office provides a number of resolution processes ranging from just an intake interview to more of an inquiry, through maybe an informal resolution, alternative resolution, and the kind of most serious option that we have, which is a formal investigation, which is dependent, again, on the jurisdictional thing we talked about in the beginning, so people and alleged conduct. Overall, I'll go into a little bit later about confidentiality, but that's the breadth of our jurisdiction. And my role as an investigator, I actually sit on the resolution side of the house, which means that the intakes come through our side. Individuals who have questions, concerns, want to know what their rights, options, and resources are. And then we also have a formal investigation side of our house that will look towards what it means to formally investigate after there's a determination of jurisdiction.
Hi everyone, my name is Michele Painter. I am a detective with the UC Irvine Police Department. I've worked for UCI PD for about 6 years now. I've been in detectives for over 2 years. I'm assigned, I guess my specialty is sexual assault, domestic violence, any crimes against persons. I handle all those cases as well as property crimes if we need help. So with a specialty in something as such as sexual assault, I work closely with victims who have anything that's happened to them, where it's power-based violence, dating violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and so forth. So with that, I work closely with the CARE office, with the counseling office, with OEOD as well. Overall, department, we handle pretty much anything that's crime related, anything, anyone has a concern with someone's behavior or with something that's happened, anything of concern, we handle. And so whether it's a crime or not, and so if it isn't, or you think it may be, we work closely with OEOD, with the CARE office, and so other offices to make sure that we can handle it appropriately. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you for introducing, giving a little bit of an overview of what your offices do, what you do. And so this next question I want to ask is, as 3 of UCI's reporting resolution options for faculty and staff, could you please address when someone may want to seek out the services of your office over maybe another office? For example, if someone were experiencing workplace bullying, where would you recommend they go versus if someone was experiencing sexual harassment?
I can start with this. So the police department is kind of unique in the sense of coming to us or coming to any other office. They kind of go hand in hand. So you can come to us, whether it's, like I said before, whether it's a crime, it meets the criteria of a crime, or it does not. We still will work with you and make sure that you reach the avenues that are appropriate for that scenario or for whatever your concerns or questions may be. So a lot of times people I get that come in, they're like, well, it's not necessarily, may not meet the criteria of a crime, but I'm just concerned. And that's totally understandable. And sometimes, sometimes behavior can be alarming or concerning. And so just for us to be aware of that and help you reach the avenues that you need and that can resolve the issue is what we do. And so, and then if it does meet the criteria of a crime, we, we'll do our job handling that, but we'll also make sure that you have the resources available to you from other different offices on campus. So that way, as a whole, physically, mentally, emotionally, you're taken care of at that point in time. So yeah, we can work with one office and work with us hand in hand at the same time. So that doesn't have to be one office and then not be able to talk to us at all. So
I think similar to what Detective Painter is saying, OEOD is the office on campus that handles all issues of discrimination, sexual violence, and sexual harassment. And so if on its face, issues falling under those categories arise, then individuals who work for the university, so employees who receive a paycheck or faculty members, even guest lecturers, would have a responsible employee reporting obligation to come to our office. And the reason for that is so that we can provide the individuals with their rights, options, and resources under university policy, excellent resources like the Ombudsman, like UCI PD and CARE. And it enables us to, even if somebody doesn't want to engage in our process, get connected to an avenue or resource that can best serve them. Often people will come to our office, similar to what Detective Painter is saying, and say, I'm not sure if it's you, but it feels like this may be sexual harassment, or this feels uncomfortable, and they may not be able to articulate what university policy it would fall under or categorize it as discrimination based on a protected category. But that's really where the investigators come in and are able to conduct an intake and work through the impact that it's having on the individual and the type of conduct that's being alleged to see whether we have jurisdiction. And so kind of a short answer to your question, Kaylee, is that even if it kind of touches on those realms, we welcome those inquiries at OEOD, and we'll make a formal referral to another office if we don't have jurisdiction. But often issues of sexual harassment, sexual violence, and discrimination, or even bullying, can be intertwined and multifaceted. So you can have gender discrimination and also just have unprofessionalism and things like that. And so we encourage individuals to come to us. But if it's not us, it's a huge part of my job to make referrals over to offices who may have jurisdiction over the conduct or may be better suited to serve the individual.
I think a commonality between all three of our offices is that we are happy to speak to somebody who comes to us, even if that person's not 100% sure they're in the right place. I guess a slight distinction for our office is that if somebody has no idea where to go, and they really are unfamiliar with the different resources on campus, they can come talk to us, and we can also point them towards different resources they could use. But if their situation has multiple aspects to it, we might say, you know, for this piece, OEOD would be the appropriate place to answer your questions about that. But you also mentioned this part, and so maybe the employee assistance program would be able to help you with that. The police department, you could call them if you want to talk about this piece. So we can kind of look at the situation holistically. We also can help somebody figure out if there's a relevant policy on campus that applies to their situation, or if there's no policy that exists right now. How are you going to work through the issue in the absence of a policy? You know, could we help coach you on how to have a conversation with the person, if that's something you're interested in? So we're a good place to come if you don't really know where to start. And everything that we discuss is confidential. We won't share anything, with the exception that I mentioned at the beginning of an imminent risk. To somebody says, I am about to go hurt myself, or somebody else involved in this is about to go hurt themselves or somebody else.
Great, thank you all so much. And Jennifer, you just touched on that confidentiality piece, which is often a barrier to seeking support for some folks, especially when it comes to instances of violence and harassment, discrimination. And so if there's more that you want to share about that, or Katherine or Michele, if you wanted to speak more to what the confidentiality looks like and what you can offer in terms of privacy and confidentiality when working with folks.
I don't really have much to add to what I just said, so I'll let the other two chime in. And if at the end there are questions that anybody has specifically, we can answer those too. So,
confidentiality, especially when it comes to things such as sexual harassment or sexual assaults or crimes against persons. On the criminal side, there's different crimes that meet the criteria of a victim remaining confidential. And so that is something that I speak to when someone comes into my office. I explain to them the process of what it means to be confidential and what rights they have as a victim of such crimes. And so that's something that will stay confidential. That person's identity will stay confidential throughout the investigation. And sometimes that's a big worry for them because it's a power-based violence or a crime against a person that's so intrusive and hard to take. Confidentiality is really important, especially if they live on campus with this person, they go to class with this person or something like that. When it comes to stuff like that, we work with other offices on campus to make sure that they're accommodated or there's accommodations for them, whether it's housing, whether it's classes. And then on the other side, making sure that as a confidential victim, you also have so many rights that are available to you, both on the university, countywide, statewide, nationwide. And I explain that to someone who comes and speaks with me and provide them all those resources so they're aware, not only on campus, but like I said, statewide, countywide, nationwide, so they don't feel comfortable being on campus and speaking to people on campus. They can outreach to other people as well. And someone who does come speak to us, they also have the right to have someone be with them. And so an advocate care office does a great job. We work closely hand in hand with making sure someone who has an advocate, and that advocate can also explain resources that are available to you, as well as confidential and victim rights. Yeah.
On the OEOD front, the role that confidentiality has often is tied to first the agency of the complainant and the way that we get the reports. So people can report to OEOD online or through our hotline and remain anonymous in doing so. And there's no way for us to track back the individual, and we're very respectful of that. There's also the ability to come to our office, and while I may know your name and do an intake interview with you, we can keep you anonymous in our files. And so electronically, there's a box that we can check where individuals, meaning other investigators, would know the desire to remain anonymous, and that would be reflected electronically. As far as the processes that we engage in, for kind of two of our processes, that's alternative resolution and formal investigation. Complainants, so persons who are making the allegations, cannot remain anonymous in those processes. And that's tied to the due process rights of the individuals against whom the allegations are being made. Nevertheless, there's so many other ways that OEOD can assist an individual if they come to our office and would like to remain anonymous. There's informal resolution options. There's our ability to provide accommodations under Title IX, so helping individuals with their coursework, providing workplace accommodations for faculty and staff, and trying to connect them to UCI PD to do safety escorts or to CARE. And so there's so many other ways that we can assist and respect the anonymity that's desired. But the kind of limitation of that anonymity is reflected in those two processes, the alternative resolution and the formal investigation. The final thing that I'll say is OEOD is an office of record, which is distinguishable from what Jennifer was talking about for the Office of the Ombudsman. And so we do take notes during our meetings. Our notes are not our own opinions, but rather exactly what the individual is saying to us. And we upload those notes to a secure online system that's only available to other investigators. It allows us to track cases to make sure that we're in compliance for federal and state law, and to see if we've had any other concerns or allegations against an individual whom the concerns are being raised against. And so it's our way of tracking. But that being said, it is only for other investigators. It's also a great function for victims of sexual violence or sexual harassment, not having to repeat themselves to different investigators every time they speak to our office, that we can actually look up the alleged conduct and start from there and ways we can help the individual. So that's one distinguishing factor for note-taking, but overall confidentiality and specifically anonymity can be definitely an option in our office, with the exception of the alternative resolution and formal investigation processes.
Great, thank all three of you for those comprehensive answers, and it really helps to outline some of the where the similarities are between your offices in terms of accessing them privately or confidentially, but also where some of those differences lie. And so following up on that, I think, especially with students, there's a big focus on conduct that happens on campus or in the workplace. But sometimes with staff and faculty, there's a whole nother aspect of their lives that is happening off campus. And so someone may have had something happen or an experience happen that may or may not involve another UCI affiliate. It may or may not have happened in the workplace, but they may still want to seek support or services on campus. And so what avenues for them exist through your offices, if any, in terms of campus or conduct that occurs off campus?
I can start with that. This happens a lot with our office. So we work closely with other police departments. We have the jurisdiction issue sometimes where if something happens in another city's jurisdiction, they have the right to take that case and investigate. But when it comes to someone, something happening off campus and they come and report it to us, we will ask that jurisdiction, because this person's affiliated with us in some capacity, we'll take the case. And usually they're more than willing to allow that. And so we'll work with that police department if it comes to retaining evidence, surveillance footage, or anything of that sort, working with them closely to make sure we get all the everything that we need. If something does happen off campus, and other jurisdiction, speaks with us, they'll come sometimes contact us. Hey, someone's affiliated with you. Something happened off campus. Would you want us to take this case, or do you guys want it? And so there's a lot of communication between us when it comes to someone who's affiliated with the UC Irvine, especially with our surrounding agencies. And we kind of have that unspoken or unwritten bond that we have where we're like, okay, hey, this is what's happening. This is happening, especially when students who live off campus, such as in Newport Beach or in Irvine, we have a good relationship with them when it comes to something of that nature. But overall, if something happens off campus and the person's affiliated, we usually end up taking the case and work it from there.
I can go next. For matters that we work on, we define very broadly that it has to be a UCI related concern. But that means that if a staff or faculty member is outside of UCI and something happens and they called our office, we would certainly be able to refer them someplace if there wasn't really a UCI connection, except other than their employment status. If the matter involved another UCI employee and there was staff, faculty, whatever, and there was the possibility they had concerns over might I run into this person or something, we could help, we could get involved and assist, because there's a kind of UCI component to it. And we do define it broadly, but the information that we work on, I mean, we get lots of calls from people who are not at all UCI affiliated, and we have to refer them elsewhere because our purview really are UCI related issues.
And from an OEOD standpoint, for alleged conduct that happens off campus, our jurisdiction hinges on the individuals and on the conduct. And so if the respondent, so the person against whom the allegations are being made, is ours, meaning affiliated with UCI, but the complainant, the person who may be making the allegations against the respondent, isn't, we have jurisdiction over the conduct and can run through, depending on the allegations, our typical processes, meaning informal resolution, AR, informal investigation. If we're talking about conduct that completely happens off campus and the respondent is not affiliated with UCI, or even if an employee or faculty member is saying, this is what's going on in my home life, I don't want to share any more details, but it's falling under domestic violence, or it is involving some sort of sexual assault matter, even a criminal process that's going on in the background, our office can support that individual under our Title IX accommodations. So separate from alternative resolution and formal investigation, a lack of physical presence on campus or a lack of jurisdiction over the respondent doesn't mean that we can't help the individual. And so I can assist in workplace accommodations, helping behind the scenes to change reporting lines if there's something about the supervisor of the individual that they're struggling with. I can communicate to leadership on their behalf, connect them with faculty and staff, mental health resources, EAP, working through UCI PD if they want safety planning for walking to their car. We're also able to do that for employees over at the medical center and any of our ambulatory clinics, meaning the ones that are off-site from UCI Medical Center, and provide individuals with schedule changes to accommodate court dates or things like that. So there's a number of ways that we can assist. Very frankly, it's creative in nature when it comes to these accommodations or these supportive measures. And so we encourage individuals to come and speak to us. There's no requirement that you divulge all the details of the information. So just us making sure that we have jurisdiction over the conduct, we get to creatively work and engage in an interactive process with that complainant on how we can assist them to succeed in their professional setting. Or if they need to, maybe take a break or leave of absence or something like that and help facilitate that. And so those are kind of the ways OEOD can assist, even if we're not talking about maybe more of a cookie cutter respondent is on campus or affiliated with UCI situation.
Thank you all for shedding some light on that. I feel it's especially pertinent now when so many of us are working from home and are in environments for a greater percentage of our time than we would as employees generally in a normal setting. And so kind of continuing on that thread of the ways in which, the pandemic and our work days and lives have changed and probably will continue to look different even as we transition to more of a hybrid model. I'm wondering what barriers to accessing your services may have been presented during this time to faculty and staff, and how you or your department have worked to kind of break down some of those barriers and help folks access your resources.
I think from an OEOD standpoint, one of the barriers that we've seen is just frankly the access to technology in this time. So everything is remote and over Zoom. And not everybody has access to that technology. And I think that that's something that we've tried to be really thoughtful about and change maybe our practices a little bit. We often kind of prefer the in-person meetings when we're doing intakes, but we're doing a lot more over the phone. Something I've been a lot more thoughtful about is the way that we email too, understanding that people are around other individuals in their homes or their workplaces now. And being thoughtful about the information that we share and the details that are in our emails. The other part specifically related to our employees and medical faculty with UCI Health, there's a huge strain on those departments because of COVID-19, because of their scheduling, and frankly, the stress that's happening on those individuals. And so our office has made sure that if we can accommodate something and somebody can only talk later on after business hours, that we're able to do that, to be more thoughtful with the way that we communicate with individuals, understanding that they may call us on their lunch break from their car, and just being really cognizant of that. And so I think the technology is a barrier, and I think one of the readjusting parts is the way that our office is approaching individuals who may have scheduling difficulties or may have a child or a dog in the background, and understanding that these are things that are kind of the norm now, and to be more flexible with that. The final thing I'll say is I'm definitely more cognizant, and I know our team is, of being really transparent about conduct that we'll be talking about prior to meetings. And so not everybody knows what each office does, and specifically for OEOD, I want to be really careful that somebody's not in a room with somebody else who may not know about the conduct. And so making sure that we kind of clarify expectations before on what we're talking about, so that there's no unnecessary disclosures. And I think a huge part of that is getting individuals connected to mental health resources prior to meeting with us. And providing them with the ability to have that confidential resource or that support person or advocate in the room. And so that's one of a couple of the challenges we've been working with in this remote time. For
UCI PD, when it comes to our patrol, they were full service. you can't really minimize that or change it in any way. But when it comes to my side, when it comes to detectives and investigations unit, especially what I specialize in, before COVID-19, having that one-on-one in-person interaction with someone who experienced something as like sexual assault or sexual harassment or something of that nature, it was really important to build that rapport and make sure I have that connection with that person. So when COVID-19 hit, there was a little bit of an adjustment period where our office was trying to figure out how can we be there for a victim or a survivor with still maintaining appropriate distancing and keeping in mind health concerns. And so there was an adjustment period. I was on maternity leave right in the middle of COVID. So I wasn't there in the very, very beginning, but when I came back, there was still an adjustment period for us. So a lot of times when it comes to a certain case where someone like sexual harassment or sexual assault specifically, I take extreme health measures and social distancing and ask them, are you willing to meet with me in person? And these are the different procedures I take and steps I take to make sure that we're both safe if we were to meet in person. And if that's something they're comfortable with, I feel like it's really important for the case and for their emotional and mental well-being to meet in person when it comes to doing interviews and explaining the process of an investigation. And so I think UCI PD overall did a great job making sure we followed all the social distancing rules and health standards while still meeting the needs of our victims and survivors, as well as working with different offices to make sure that they have the resources they need and whatever rights they need or whatever rights and services they need. So, yeah.
As for our office, prior to COVID, when an individual would call or come in to make an appointment to meet with one of us, they would be given the choice to either meet in person or to do a phone appointment, up to them. And when we transitioned to remote working with COVID, the options became, would you like a phone appointment or would you like to speak over Zoom? And so that option's still up to the person. I agree with Katherine that the fact that some people don't have access to technology in the same way presents a barrier to them being able to see us face to face, but they still have the option to speak over the phone as they did before. And one thing that we do make sure now, whenever we are kind of introducing ourselves and explaining the role of our office before we get into whatever is the reason the person's reached out to us, is that we do ask, are you alone? Is there anybody else around who might overhear our conversation? If so, would you like to move to another space? Would you like to reschedule this call? How can we make it so that our conversation can be as open as it needs to be? And I also usually let the person know, I'm by myself, there's nobody here, this isn't being recorded, there's no way that anybody else is going to overhear what we're talking about right now. So those are some of the ways that we've tried to help a person feel more at ease about working with us if they're not able to meet with us face to face.
Great. Thank you all for sharing that. I think there's a lot of different barriers, as you were all explaining and kind of describing, to accessing support resources, right? From that technology piece to privacy concerns to just wanting that sometimes a face-to-face connection with somebody else that is supposed to be supporting them. And so thank you for expanding on that and how you've worked to kind of be flexible and combat some of those barriers. For our three wonderful panelists, I don't know if there's anything else that you would want to share about your resources, what you can offer to faculty and staff on campus, your role in different processes regarding violence, discrimination, harassment, that you haven't already had a chance to share.
I'm going to put my information in the chat. So that way everyone has it. It's my email as well as my desk line and my direct cell phone line. If anyone has any questions or any concerns, feel free to reach out to me. If you would like to speak to me about a concern you have for yourself or for someone you know, or want to report something that you feel needs to be heard, whether it's you or someone you know, or something of that nature, feel free to reach out. Like we had said before, we all work closely together. So whether it is something that UCI PD handles or it's CARE or so forth, we'll make sure that we find the right avenues for you or for the person you know. So feel free to reach out at any point. I'm always open, always try and have my cell phone or my email up. But once again, thank you for having UCI PD be a part of this. This is great. Thank you so much.
I too will put my contact information in the chat. And because the Office of the Ombudsman is not an office of record, we actually prefer for people to call us and set up time to talk to one of us rather than sending an email with any sort of details, because we don't utilize email because it creates a record. I mean, we can email to, if somebody's trying to reach us, I'll give you a call, but we're not going to put any details about a situation that we're talking to somebody about in email. So, and just, we are able to help with any type of UCI related concern. So even outside of sexual assault, harassment, bullying, issues that fall outside of those areas, we are happy to be of assistance in whatever way we can to help somebody identify kind of what can I do at this point, what policies pertain, what are my options, and just help be a sounding board sometimes too, to think through what's my comfort level, what would I like to do with my situation.
And I too will put my contact information, my email into the chat. It's the quickest way to get a hold of me. And so there's also the option to go to OEOD's website and to report online. A fun fact is that goes straight to my email. So either way, I would really love to assist you on any sort of concerns that you may have. The final thing that I think I'll say on OEOD's end is a little bit more broadly than just the focuses of maybe sexual violence and sexual harassment. I know though, and I'm aware that there's a number of policies that are coming down specifically regarding COVID-19 vaccination and also parental leave and pregnancy rights as it pertains to the UC system as a whole. Both of those, OEOD has jurisdiction over concerns regarding discrimination based on disability, which may be pregnancy or anything related to maternity, pregnancy loss, or complications, as well as exemptions for religion or medical condition. And so I encourage you to contact us. I just know that a couple of those emails have been going around and wanted to do a plug for that. And also I'm really grateful for CARE and just the opportunity to speak here, to sit on a panel with offices that we often work with and show kind of the coordination that happens between our three offices and really the wide breadth of resources that UCI has to offer for faculty and staff who present with these concerns. And so thank you, Kaylee, for hosting and for providing such thoughtful questions and allowing us to talk a lot, and I'm grateful for that opportunity.
Thank you all so much. And thank you for putting your contact information in the chat. I'm sure folks will greatly appreciate having some friendly faces that they recognize and can reach out to should a concern arise. So at this point, I would like to thank you all three so much. You do such wonderful work for our community, and you shared such valuable resources and information with us today. Thank you to all of our participants for joining. I really hope that you're able to leave this session with a greater sense of community, a new insight or information that proves supportive and helpful as you continue with your day. But thank you again to everyone. And I will hang back if anyone has any last minute questions or would like to chat.